calling the meeting of the Plymouth Planning Board to order. First up, we have the roll call. So I will call the roll. John Christ, I'm present. Rebecca Hansen.
I'm here.
Phil.
Here.
Neil.
I'm here.
Mike, absent. And Mark, also absent. Susan Wood.
Here.
And alternates, Zach and Mike Bouchard and Peter present. So it looks like we are two, oh, and Guy. Oh, welcome. Our new alternate to the planning board. Would you like to say anything about yourself, or not? It's not necessary. There's not any pressure on. Well, welcome. So looks like we are down 2 members tonight, so we can welcome Mike and Peter if you'd like to join as voting members tonight. And if you want to grab a seat somewhere. Oh yeah, if you'd like to join us at the table as a non-voting member in discussions.
What's your first meeting coming up in June? Nice to meet you. That's Joseph.
Hey, nice to meet you.
So it looks like next up is the review of minutes for 2 meetings. Our March 17th meeting and our April 5th meeting. So I guess we'll start with the March 17th meeting. Are there any comments or corrections?
I was going to make a motion to approve the minutes of March 17th.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I'm abstaining.
All right, the minutes are approved of March 17th. And then we have April 5th, which was our joint meeting with the zoning board. Are there any comments or corrections? Actually, June, this was a joint meeting, I guess. So it's only about the part that pertains to when we were chairing it?
Right, yeah,
Okay.
that one middle section, so.
Yeah.
I'm going to refrain from making motions
Okay.
on this one since I wasn't there.
Yes.
I am not used to making motions. I move that we approve the minutes from April 5th.
Second that.
Further discussion? All who approve?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh,
Abstain.
Opposed? And abstain.
Abstain.
Okay.
Phil and Leo.
All right, so the minutes from April 5th are approved. So June, has there been any communications received?
We just today got, there had been a question that had come from a member of the community. We did receive just today a wetlands permit application for a single-family home in Plymouth off of Yetton Road. So that, I know that some people in the neighborhood had gotten abutter notices from DES or from the, Gove Environmental. We weren't sure what this was about, so we do just receive this today. So it's a driveway permit, a culvert, basically, crossing some wetlands. We quickly looked at it, Joseph and I did, and, but again, it's under DES's review, and Conservation Commission would look at it, but if anybody wants to look at it, we have it now at Town Hall.
Okay, thank you. All right, so it looks like up next is the applications and public hearings. So we have an application from New Car Ford of Plymouth for their property on Tenny Mountain Highway to, I guess, expand their showroom and renovate their property and PID number 212026, and it is in the industrial and commercial zone. And June, is there anything you'd like to say before we ask the applicant for?
I think the summary on the agenda pretty much summarizes it. Will Davis from Horizon Engineering, I see him online here on Zoom, so I let him kind of go through the details of it. You'll have a staff report, which Joseph gets the credit for doing.
Thank you.
I want to note that. We did look over the plan, so there's a few things we can go over at, maybe let Will present, and then there's a couple things that minor corrections, probably some of the labeling and a few things we noted there. The applicant did request to have this come to the board this evening to get it started, but they did not submit the drawings of what the new addition will look like to the building when they're tearing off the front part, rebuilding it. So that's going to be forthcoming, so they recognize that, and they know they have to submit it. So I just wanted to point that out. I think that was pretty clear in the materials, too. So I would turn it over to Will if you want. He's
Right.
on.
So, Will, I guess you'll be on Zoom representing the applicant, and so if you'd like to give us an introduction to this project and any other pertinent information or waivers that you're requesting, I'll turn the table over to you.
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, sorry I can't be there in person. I'm actually road tripping with my family this week, so I'm coming to you from a hotel, but I will be there in person next month. So I could share my screen if you'd like and kind of go through the plans. Does that work for you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Looks like I'm gonna need to be enabled for that.
You can see I
Should be covered.
That's,
Working on it.
We're working on it.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you should be a co-host now.
Can you try it now, Will?
Got it.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Okay, so this is the existing site. You're probably familiar, but this is Penny Mountain Highway on the north side of the property. This is the Plymouth Ford existing site with the showroom and parking and inventory area. Here, this is all paved. So the property's bounded to the north by the Tin Mountain Highway right-of-way, and then there's a property line that runs down the east side with a right-of-way for Town West Road, which is a private road, and then also bounded on the west and then further down on the south. So as June pointed out, part of the project is, well, the focus of the project is two building additions. This front portion, this rectangle you see here, is planned to be demolished. It's the gable end section as you see it from the road. So that's really the only focus for the existing condition sheet. And I can go to the proposed plan to show you what's going on. So once that portion of the building is down, this is the footprint of the proposed addition in this area, which is basically a redevelopment of existing building and parking and sidewalk area. The line of this existing
You guys
parking.
hear him? Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry?
I don't know, you just seem like you're cutting out a little bit, but if you talk louder maybe a little bit,
Okay, yeah, sorry about that.
that's much better. Yeah.
Is okay? Is that better?
Yes, much better.
All right, I'll just talk a little louder. Yeah, so the thing that the proposed addition in this area is largely a redevelopment of the existing building that's coming down, along with some of the walkways that surround it. So the project, the disturbance area is outlined by this dark dashed line, so you can kind of see where we're proposing to cut pavement and replace everything kind of inside of that outline. So it'll be new concrete sidewalks around the new building, new pavement in here to basically put the parking right back where it was. This line, where that existing where that proposed parking is shown is right where the existing parking is. So, the building's not really moving much into the parking lot. And then this is a new walkway here that will connect to the main walkway. This is shown as kind of a separate build or a separate line, but this is really just a part of the overall building here. They're calling it a celebration bay, so I think they're going to have a vehicle in there. And this is all flush pavement, so there's no curb in here, so it could be, vehicles can be driven up into the showroom. The other addition is right over here on the side. So customers will be able to come in the main drive, come through a garage bay here. So this will be an enclosed service port. There'll be a garage bay they can open up. They can drop off their vehicle for service, and then the technician can take it out the south end. There'll be another garage bay down here. So let's see. Both of these buildings or building additions will have flat roofs. So like a membrane roof with a drain that'll come down internal to the building, and then we're showing those drains. The main one coming across here, and the service port one coming here and tying into that one and heading across to the existing ditch line, where we're showing some new stone to stabilize that outlet and tie it into the existing 12-inch that leaves the site and goes through a ditch this way. The only other thing I'll point out, I guess, is that there is an oil water separator right here now that serves the service area, which is going to that outlet will remain, but we will have to relocate that as part of the project. We'll work with Plymouth Village Sewer and Water District to get that approved and tie into the existing service line. I think that's kind of the big picture overview. I know staff had a few comments, which I'd be happy to address, or I can just take general questions at this point. We can discuss it. As June pointed out as well, we are, we're assuming we're coming back in May. We will be coming with elevation views of the two additions. That wasn't ready yet. They're going through some approvals with Ford corporate to make sure, they know exactly what it's going to look like. So we should have that in the coming weeks. We'll provide that as soon as we have it.
Thank you very much, Will. So does the board have any questions or comments at this point? I guess we're considering the completeness of the application.
My questions are a little more for after, if we determine it's complete.
Okay.
But,
So do we have any questions about the completeness? Do we want to go over the checklist?
I would move that it's not complete if we don't have elevations, and that if we accept it as complete, that starts a ticking clock that I don't think we want to start yet.
yeah, I guess I wonder, it sounds like Will has some information about the elevations and, if that's something that, can we make it complete with a condition? Does that work?
It still starts the clock ticking, right?
Yeah, and I think that they had contacted me and asked about that, and I suggested if they wanted to bring it forward, I mean, I know that other times the board has accepted applications pending, with an understanding that these other pieces would come within time for the next meeting, so we can set a deadline for that receipt of it, so you have it about a week before, whatever the Friday is before the next meeting. So you have time to review it. I think that would be appropriate because they have clearly stated that. And while they've asked, I think technically on the checklist for a waiver, so you're kind of granting that until a date in the future. Does that make sense? And because otherwise, I think we had some comments on it, but the details are there to start that process. And starting the clock ticking, I don't think this is as complex of a plan as you've seen for some other sites. So I don't anticipate that clock would be a problem.
Okay.
It's a good couple months anyway, so you have 65 days, I think it is. So.
And Will, you would be comfortable with that as well, I suppose?
Yeah, so, I've been working with the architect on it, and I think that they're substantially complete, but like I mentioned, they're kind of trying to get approval from Ford Corporate, and he said that, he thought he would have it for this meeting, but he doesn't quite have it yet, so we should have it.
I'd be comfortable working on getting this to complete with the agreement that, you know, we won't be able to do an approval without the elevation.
Yes. Exactly.
So how about you say submittal by May 13th, you know, granting a waiver until then of that item? Is that a good solution? That's the Friday before May 19th, so we would then have time to send it out to you. Do you think that would work, Will?
That works for me, yes.
And that's for the elevations.
Well, it seems like I mean, we can certainly go through the checklist, but it seems like most of the rest of the things that came out in the planner report are fairly minor, like
Yeah.
add a north arrow, and I think we would just expect those missing things and, you know, the setback on Town West Road and things like that. I would think those would need to be included in the next round.
Do you have a motion? Is there a motion on the floor?
Rebecca?
I'll make a motion.
No. I thought that Phil said that he was making a motion.
No, it wasn't a motion, it was just a discussion.
So there's no
We
motion.
seem to be leaning there.
Okay.
Are there any motions?
I'll make a motion that we accept the application as complete with the understanding that the waiver for the elevation, we need that by the 13th of May.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion?
Wasn't there also a question about a depiction of signage, which is not currently included?
Correct, they have some sign, the location of a Ford sign on the plan. There are a couple other directional signs that we should ask to add, but this is just a minor missing detail. I can talk about the sign thing a little bit later. So
Okay.
they are showing where it is. They haven't proposed any new signage at this time.
Okay. Did you have a second?
Yes, we did.
All right.
Susan made a second.
Thank you.
So, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? So the application is accepted as complete. So we should now move on to a discussion of a bit more of an in-depth discussion of the application and get into some more details, and that would be pending approval, which I guess we probably will not get to this evening. I think we're all in understanding of that. It'll be good to discuss some further details of what we might be looking for our next meeting.
And we should be able to open the public hearing tonight, right?
Yeah. We want to start out right away. We can discuss here first.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it'd be appropriate to certainly discuss some
Yeah.
things. We, noticed a few missing things. We've passed the staff report on to Will, just in the last couple of days. Again, minor things like North Arrow, engineer stamp. There's a mislabel, I think, on the, Will, jump in if you disagree with any of these things, but the future conditions as labeled as existing conditions, right? Some minor things like that. The setback is actually shown as 15 feet along Town West Road, but per our zoning ordinance, you have two front yards there, so that should probably be 30, that should be shown as, relabeled as 30, but the building doesn't encroach in the setback, so it's not a problem in terms of approving what's being there. It's not like it's in the setback. So the biggest, and there was not any indication of site lighting changing and similar to the signage. So we just wanted to verify, ask out Will if that's indeed the case. On the signage, the only thing I would say is that about a year ago, I think it was, New Car applied to the zoning board for variance to have an additional freestanding sign, and that was not granted. There was a little bit of discussion about it, of course, that night, and we have reached out, and I've also more recently reached out to Will and talked to him about this, the provisions within the zoning ordinance that are a little uncertain of how to interpret, but about a master sign plan. So that needs to be approved by the planning board. So I had asked them actually if they wanted to include that at this time, because it's there, it's noticed, but they were not ready to do that. So the current signage, is my understanding, would remain, and they may come back in the future if they want to do some different signage that needs some special approval from the board. Is that correct, Will?
Yes, I did run that by Sean with New Car, and he understands that he would have to come back, obviously. And he's just not ready yet. I guess they haven't really figured out what they want to do, if anything, with the signage.
So I actually had a question about parking and traffic flow. I see parking indicated alongside the building, but nowhere else. And I know this whole lot is filled with parking, and I'm just kind of curious about that.
Right, and so the parking, immediately north of the building is striped now. I believe the rest of the lot is unmarked, and so it's primarily, it's used in a variety of different ways, I guess, in terms of primarily for vehicle inventory. But I think that the only and I will come back with more information after I'm able to go over this with John in the next hearing and just make sure we're clear about what is customer parking and what is inventory parking. But the idea of those diagonal spaces is that with the new addition, we'll basically be promoting a one-way circulation there from north to south, so that there's just enough space, and it's just it would cause a circulation issue if we had two-way in there. There's actually enough room to keep those parking spaces 90 and have a full aisle behind them with the building, but you kind of like getting a one-way circulation would be better, a safer way to do it. So we would be striping those spaces along Town West Road as part of the project.
I have a question for
Yes.
Mr. Davis. Who is responsible for Town Road West?
I believe it's I'll have to get clarification, but I believe it's an entity, there's an LLC that's basically kind of an association between those landowners. I think there's 3 of them there that share that road for access. So
You can get
bank
clarification?
there. Like who maintains that road?
Right.
Maybe that could be added as a note on the plan once you get that, Will, on the existing conditions, just so it's clear that it's not a town maintained road, so.
Correct.
Rebecca?
My question is about stormwater and impervious surface, and it doesn't seem to me like you're increasing the impervious surface on this property, because you're essentially, where the building's expanding, it's where there's currently pavement. Is that right?
That's correct. I mean, we do have a calculation on I think it's the proposed sheet in the top right corner. It's increasing by, I think, less than 0.5% over the site.
But the new construction is going to be tied into the existing stormwater management for the flat roof. Is that right?
Right. I mean, right now, that existing it's going to be discharged into the ditch that basically everything sheets into now. So the site sheet flows into a perimeter ditch that runs between the site and Town West Road.
Right. So the entire site's discharging into the ditch? Okay.
Correct. Yeah, basically as it is now.
However, now it's a direct discharge.
Well, right, so the roof drains will be directed to a pipe, right?
Was the culvert, existing driveway culvert, hydraulic capacity evaluated?
We have not done any stormwater analysis as part of the project.
June, will the town municipal review engineer be reviewing these plans?
I have not sent it to Mike Vignali from KV Partners yet, and I wanted the board to discuss that tonight, actually, to make that decision if you wanted to, because all the existing site does go into that ditch, but it is, as Will mentioned, sheet flow, so now that has that more direct outlet, which they're proposing to do with the piping, or the stone, adding some stone there where the drain pipe discharges. But it's not replacing that 12-inch culvert. That's correct, Will, right? Using that existing?
Right.
So, I think, I'm not an engineer, so I guess I'd defer to Peter perhaps, or
Yeah.
anybody else, what recommendations you may have, or somebody else on the board.
I'd just like to state that I have observed the existing drainage retention swales beyond their capacity.
Okay,
And I think there should be a stormwater analysis.
okay. I was not aware of that. You've got more regular knowledge of the site, so we can certainly ask the applicant to do some stormwater analysis, and then we can ask Mike Vignali to review it.
Yeah, there seems to be some concern. Peter, you have concern about the direct flow?
I'm glad you brought it up. I think there should be an answer. There is definitely an engineering response to it. Like you said about circulation, this added, calls it drive-through service port, and in the statement, it says there's added building square footage, and yet I don't see any parking calcs or existing parking space numbers. Is it a net zero? Are you adding them back? How many more are required because of your added square footage? And how many spaces are required based on the land use regulations? Those are a few things.
Yeah, we can do a more detailed parking calculation. With respect to the stormwater, we could do an analysis. I think, we're going to find that we're not going to be changing the peak rates of runoff at all because basically on a site like this, everything, the time of concentration is going to be the same because it's such a small site. So even, regardless of whether we're sheet flowing or going through a pipe, the model is going to look at it exactly the same. But, we'd be happy to do it if that that's what the board wants to see.
Thank you. Any other further comments from the board at this point, or discussion?
So would you want Mike Vignali to review it? Because then we need to get money and hold it in escrow
Yeah.
and that kind of thing.
Do we need to make a motion, vote on that, or how does that work?
General consensus, or Neil, you seem to think so. Yes.
I agree with Peter.
Okay.
So just to clarify, though, on that question, normally when we do an analysis for a site plan, we're looking at the difference between the pre-development and the post-development, right? And so we're looking at making sure that what we're doing in the proposed condition is not going to make anything worse, right? But we typically wouldn't be looking at, the capacity of existing roadside ditches or culverts because that's not, if you want us to look at that, we can, but that's not typically within the, purview of the review. So what I'm getting at is I think is the pre versus the post is going to be exactly the same here in
Yes.
this case.
I'm curious where you find an extra 96 square feet of impervious surface in the new plan, since it's my recollection of that site is that it's all paved existing, so whether it's a parking lot or a roof, it's impervious. So I'm,
Yeah.
is there a planter that's being paved over or something along those lines?
There's basically one of the landscape guidelines getting a little bit smaller. That's
Okay.
usually
Okay.
circulation to get into the service port. The one on the, I think on the northeast corner, I think is getting smaller.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
But Will, having the direct pipe from the roof drains, I guess I would ask that you look at the the velocity maybe, or the
Q factor.
yeah, the speed of which that concentration into a pipe into the ditch, and that's why you're proposing the stone line ditch? So, or is there some factor? I mean, there's something that's changing. That's you're putting that stone lining into that ditch, right? Because that's not there.
That's correct. So I mean, that's an erosion control measure, like a permanent erosion control measure. So because we're concentrating that flow into a pipe, the outlet needs to be stone lined. That's the different condition. But in terms of the rate of runoff that's going there, we don't anticipate that's going to change. It's just the velocity will be greater at that one point. And we're happy to do an analysis and go through, Mike. I guess I would, I'd like to find a way to do it if we can before the next hearing, if possible.
Yes.
That's the only thing I would request, is that we don't, hopefully we can do that.
So the primary issue then is the direct higher velocity runoff, because we don't really expect the overall volume to change from where we were previously.
Right. It's the rate at which it
Yes.
goes. So again, I would.
So, are there any more, Rebecca?
I mean, I don't really have an answer, but I think that we're dealing with, it's fairly small scale, and not significant changes to the site. I mean, but I also think there's some questions there that we should probably answer, but I'm just not sure if we need to pull the engineer on something that's a minor redevelopment. But I'm open to it either way, really.
Honestly, if there was going to be somebody asked about the capacity of the culvert that goes under the entrance, which is shown as 12-inch high-density polyethylene. If there were going to be an issue with increased velocity, it likely wouldn't, well, it's hard to say, but, that 12-inch culvert is probably going to be the choke point, and it's probably going to back up into this ditch to the south, which, that's why, but, there may be limitations to the impact off-site, even if there is higher velocity, just because there's a constriction there, but it would be worth, I would support having an engineering assessment of the drainage, for sure.
Susan, Mike, any thoughts?
Wouldn't you
I have
agree?
the same thoughts as Rebecca does, but, I mean, whichever you decide to do is fine. But I feel the same way she
There's
does.
a lot of flow up there, it's going to back up here anyway, isn't it?
Yes. While the hydraulic conditions are largely similar, hydrologic conditions are largely similar, the hydraulic conditions are entirely different. Water will get to that driveway culvert much quicker and much faster. And if the impoundment just upstream, which is that swale, which has very little volume, if that is full or near full, then that water is less likely to make it out of a relatively small culvert and associated impoundment. So I'm not advocating a full stormwater evaluation either. As you mentioned, if you just look at the changes within the pre and post localized watershed or the area servicing this culvert, that's really all the work that has to be done. That the review engineer can quickly and easily review your calculations to assess, will the existing culvert function or will it not? what is its capacity, and how are the hydraulic conditions changed?
Okay, so you want the focus of the analysis to be on that 12-inch culvert? Just the capacity of it in the pre and the post?
In terms of stormwater, stormwater, yes, that's my concern.
So, I mean, there seems to be enough concern on the board to merit this. Do we need an official vote on that? Or I think there seems to be enough concern to merit looking into this with an engineer.
If that's the consensus of the board, then we can do it, yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
I mean, staff can make that determination. We didn't because it
Yeah.
seemed,
I'm good with that.
work with them.
Okay,
And have Mike review it.
so let's do that, yes.
I'd just like to put a little caveat on that.
Okay,
I'm advocating the review of this sort of, I'll call it micro portion of the site related to the drive culvert, not a full site plan review, just this stormwater
Yep.
portion,
Yep.
which will limit his scope.
that makes sense, yeah.
So Will, Mike does things pretty quickly. It's just a matter of getting an escrow agreement for probably a few hundred. I'll talk to him about it, and it might be easiest once you do your calculation to then send it to Mike, so it's clear about what that level of review is, that amount of area that's really just the capacity of that one culvert.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion about other issues before we open a public hearing? Okay. Well, it is 7:06, and I open a public hearing. If you have any comments on the merits of this proposal, please come forth. No?
Anyone online?
Anyone online? I don't think I see anyone else. Oh, actually, there are. All right. In that case, it is 7:07, and I am closing the public hearing.
Continuing.
Until
Continuing the public hearing.
closing for tonight and continuing to
Yes.
May 19th.
Yes, closing for tonight, continuing to May 19th. Thank you.
Okay.
Still getting used to this.
Yeah, you got that one in stereo too.
Yeah. All right.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Your support, not your criticism.
No, and I welcome it. I got my sport team on the side.
There's an 11 by 17 plan set if you want it over there on the table.
All right, that's our agenda. Here we are. Okay. All right.
Looking around,
I might just say that we're back in the game again.
Hi,
It's going to create a big
can you give me one?
question mark.
I was looking around and I never noticed there were extra copies there. I actually looked, I thought they were,
Yeah, I had just stuck them over there. I didn't think to bring them.
Thank you.
she had jumped out.
So you're back up there.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't realize that until, I was looking around. You can take it home.
So next up,
We normally print things with the printer board.
we have informational and pre-application reviews. We have New Hampshire Electric Co-op. They have a waiver request for a proposed minor utility facility on parcel 208-037, which is on Fairgrounds Road. And we should all have a packet, if I can find mine, about this. Are there any representatives of New Hampshire? So if you'd like to come up and,
I would let Joseph
Oh,
take the lead on this too, because he's worked with
Okay.
Gary, right?
Yes, Gary LeMay, New Hampshire Co-op.
so Joseph, would you like to say a few words first?
Yeah, sure. So, just general overview. The New Hampshire Electric Co-op has provided us with a formal waiver request for a fiber optic head-end building. So it's on the fairgrounds site. The site plan review regulations do state that anything over 100 square feet is going to require site plan review. So this proposal is only slightly over that, so that the Electric Co-op has submitted this request for a waiver, in their belief that it does not rise to needing a full site plan review. So if Gary LeMay is their representative, if you'd like to go over his request, and if you'd like, I can pull up the drawings on the screen share.
All right, Gary?
Sure. Gary LeMay. I work at New Hampshire Electric Cooperative. I call myself a renewable energy engineer, but I'm a degreed civil engineer with a PE and an MBA. We are, you may have read in the paper, building out the fiber network in the underserved and unserved areas of Grafton County. I think I believe it's $40 million that we're going to be spending on that. And that build out requires what's called a head-end building, which is basically a building where I'm going to say a fiber source that has a lot of capacity comes in, and then small fiber leaves there as distributing the fiber to the various homes and businesses along the way. I guess I would liken it to the same thing as I've been in the electric industry for 45 years now, and it's very similar to what you do with electricity. We have a high voltage line going into a transformer and then distributing at a lower voltage. This isn't changing voltage, but it is changing volume. Or you can think of it as a tree. The trunk of the tree would be the large cable coming in, and then the branches would be the smaller cables going out. Because of the the distance, you need to have these buildings every so often. We've decided at the co-op to go with these, what's called a head-end building. It's a precast concrete building. And what they do is, again, we'll have the fiber come in, the fiber go out. There'll be air conditioning, heating, but it's an unmanned structure. We'll have an emergency generator and a propane tank to feed the generator there, just in case the power goes out. We want to make sure the fiber's still running. So it's we've got several of these going on around this county. We've got I'm working on one in Sandwich now that's almost built. Well, the building's there, and we're getting ready to run fiber in Sandwich. We've been doing fiber. Again, you might have read a couple years ago, many of you are probably members of the co-op, I'm going to believe, and voted overwhelmingly to have us go ahead with this New Hampshire broadband project. So that's what this is. It's New Hampshire broadband to bring the fiber, again, to the area. So, again, we will need another one of these, like say in Rumney and probably other town. I know in other towns, and it's again just to distribute it. So in Plymouth, that's a good location. That's where the fiber is. It's land that we own already, and so we just wanted to site that there. And we're putting it in that northwest corner, southwest corner of that lot, trying to just minimize any impact on that lot, and it's pretty. I call it a pretty minor structure. Yes, your regulations are I think 100 square feet, and our building will be a little bigger, but that's what we're trying to do. I'm more than happy to answer any questions anybody else might have.
Well, thank you very much for your work on this. And yeah, does the board have any questions? Peter?
Could you tell us a little bit, describe the site in terms of access, security, lighting, what land improvements are required and are you going to do as a result of this project?
Okay for me to come up here and kind of point?
Yeah.
Please do.
So this is existing. I mean, if you look at the pictures, this oval has been there since I don't know when. Forever, as far as I can tell. There was an old racetrack in the midway and all that. This driveway exists, and all we're going to do is just put a gravel driveway there, probably 10 or 11 feet wide, and put the little building in here. Again, we're going to put it on the intent is a thickened slab. We've got a design that we've used in other substations where we put like 12 inches of crushed stone, some insulation, some poly to minimize moisture, and this precast building will come in with a crane, and in an hour we'll drop it on and be done. And then we'll run, fiber. There's poles along this road. We'll run a power line in. We'll run, fiber in. And that's pretty much it. It'll just sit there and unmanned. Once it's built, nobody needs to go there. You know, other than maintenance or maybe upgrades. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. Are all the lines overhead or underground?
The lines on Fairgrounds Road existing are overhead. What we usually do, again, we've done 3 of these right now. I've worked on Colebrook, Leominster, and the one in this is a newer design than Colebrook and Leominster in that we're putting this precast building in. But the fiber will come in underground from a pole and the electric will come in underground from a pole. Just kind of keeps it, that's just kind of what we do.
And the entire parcel is already fenced?
No, I don't think the entire parcel is, I know there's a fence here,
The frontage is fenced.
Yeah.
and I don't think there's fencing everywhere. There is a little, this is fenced in, that's obviously some storage, it's been there quite a while. But yes, this whole area is fenced, and there's a locked gate there. So, you know, we're just gonna utilize, I'm just showing this coming off here. It's pretty flat in there. You can, I don't know if you can see topo on there. You can see it a little bit. It's a rise. You know, the road goes downhill this way, kind of downhill this way. Again, we're just gonna carve into this little hill right here, and just enough to get that building in.
Do you know the quantity of land disturbance that you anticipate?
It's 200 square feet for the building. It's about another 100 square feet. We don't need to put a concrete pad under the propane tank, but we prefer to do that as a better practice than just putting it on the ground. So I would say you got about 300 square feet here. And if this road is 200, you know, there's another 2,000 square feet if it's 200 feet long and 10 feet wide. So, I mean, we're talking probably less than 2,500 square feet. Again, anything we disturb, we will seed and mulch.
The only structure is 200 square feet.
Yeah, the structure is 200 square feet. Yep, it's,
Any other questions? Rebecca?
Question/discussion point, I guess. So I think the point of the site plan review process is partly to review all these details, but also to facilitate a conversation between the board, the applicant, and any abutters. So I just want to think about the things that abutters might concern about, and if or be concerned about. And I think if Frank were here, he'd have the list of things that come from a site that might be offensive to people who live next door. But noise, traffic, stormwater, what's going to happen in construction. I mean, I did hear you say you just basically it drops from a crane and it's installed. But lighting.
We have no intention of having lighting on this building. I mean, there might be a light on the outside if somebody's there at night, but there's no need for any, street lights or any of that, or area lighting.
But largely unstaffed. So there
Totally
won't be,
unstaffed, yes.
there won't be traffic in and out regularly.
No.
I know you said there's going to be a generator. I'm assuming that's only running when the power is actually out, so it's not going to be.
Power's out, right.
Okay.
Well, along similar lines, I had a question. You mentioned it in here on the packet that the surrounding area, it's quite a mix. I mean, there's some kind of there's 3 lakes and some other warehouse sort of stuff. There's also some residences right there, and I'm kind of curious about visibility and how this relates to the surrounding neighborhood, which is already mixed, but how does it contribute to that mix? And is it visible? How visible? Can we consider screening it depending on visibility and that sort of thing?
I mean, even though I know it's zoned agricultural, I mean, with 3 lakes across the street, they've got a lot of equipment there. We've got a substation across the street. If you look at the properties, again, our substation is here. 3 Lakes is here. This is a commercial building. I would call it a commercial building. I'm not sure what you guys classify it as, but there seems to be another structure in the back here of some sort that isn't shown on this. Again, this is an old plan. This owner over here, it seems to be a landscape business also, so it's not a white, Cape house that we're building. It's a pebble. The outside is like a pebble stone. It's painted brown with tan trim. So it's going to sit there. I think it's going to be relatively benign. I mean, will you see it? Sure. But I don't think it would be offensive. We, again, keep our properties up like they should be.
Peter?
Would you say the structure height is 12 feet or less?
Oh, absolutely. It's 1 story at the most. I mean, it's not a flat roof. It's a very low-pitched roof. I'm going to say only 1 or 2%. It's a membrane on top of the Again, this is a concrete block. It's very heavy when it comes in.
I've tried to pay attention to what's on that parcel driving by, and it's actually kind of hard to see back there because there's an existing fence line that's vegetated. There's existing screening there, and there is. If you look at the left side of that picture, there is a commercial structure there. There's a house behind it, but that really is a commercial. It looks like an automotive shop that's there. That I have, and there's a significant vegetated buffer there as well. I'm looking at the aerial photos, so I have.
Sorry, I totally interrupted. Please continue.
No, I think I would have a hard time arguing that there'd be a lot of disturbance there. And I think any disturbance that's there would be significantly less than the fair that used to be there.
Thank you.
When they were trying to do
Very
like
different anyway.
Lollapalooza was supposed to go there at one point.
I have a
like
question.
1996.
I was just going to share, I'm sorry.
Do you know of any other plans that the co-op has for the fairground property?
We have no other plans at this time. No. We still trying to figure out what we're going to do with that piece of property.
No master plan, huh?
No master plans. Like I said, it physically is a good spot for the fiber. That's why we chose that. I mean, I suggested that maybe we ought to go up on Tenny Mountain Highway. We got all the stuff in the industrial commercial zone. I mean, we're next to we know what we got up there. But for the fiber source, this is a better location. That's why we're here.
Okay.
But we don't have any other plans. No.
Do you have a thought, Rebecca?
Yeah, just thinking about sort of long term, if we were to go forward with a waiver, would we want to make sure that there's some sort of as-built plans for this? Is that something that's important, or is that something that we need to think about, like, if there is a site plan review for something that's more significant further down the road?
Well, they would get a building permit, so that would serve
Okay,
as,
all right.
the plans
Okay,
for
so
that
that's-
would be in the building permit. So.
Gotcha.
So I did just put
And
up a.
I didn't quite hear that. Were you talking to me or them?
It was more of a discussion point. I think we've resolved it.
So you
Bottom
still
line
would
is-
need a building permit
Yeah.
application.
Yeah,
so that
this
we
is
would
just-
have record of it.
Right. I mean, we're trying to move this project along, and yes, we will absolutely have a building permit, and if there's inspections needed, we'll certainly do that. We will follow everything that's, the rules that got to be done.
Gary, do you know roughly how far apart these service buildings have to be to provide
Well,
the level of service that the co-op's planning?
there's only one, there may be another one, I don't think there's one on Green Street. We have a substation there. But the next one is Rumney. We have a substation in Rumney, which I'm going to say that's like 12 or 15 miles away. That would be the next one. Bridgewater, if you go down Route 3 here and River Road, we have a substation down there. That would be another, they're quite a ways apart. Some towns, I know, will have one of these little huts or fiber head-end buildings. And because they're so big in distance in the roads, we're probably going to have something called a cabinet, which is basically a 10 by 10 piece of concrete with it looks like a transformer on it. But there's none of those proposed in Plymouth, so that tells me that this is a small enough area we can serve all of it from this location. Or, Bridgewater may come back up the backside of Plymouth, from down there. You don't know, but it's going to be on our existing poles.
Thank you.
Are there any other concerns? June?
I was just going to say, I've added up here on the screen the Google image with the tax map the lot boundaries from our tax maps on there. So I think one thing why we wanted the board to decide on this is, it's more square footage than site plan review, but this site has previously certainly been disturbed and, is very, the soils there, I haven't been there for many, many years. My introduction to Plymouth was Plymouth State Fair, but that was a long time ago. It's probably, hard packed, gravelly. It's not like there's a lot of vegetation in there growing on the site at this time. So I don't think there's a lot of disturbance in terms of the relationship with the entire parcel too, so. Just wanted to point that out, because this image kind of gives that impression a little bit.
I have a quick question. You mentioned this is part of the broadband initiative, and that it's a head end for distribution of fiber. Is this dedicated just to the co-op, or do other CLECs and Datalex have access to it for the last one?
This is just the co-op.
Okay.
Yeah,
So only
and-
co-op personnel will be going and visiting the site.
Well, we're still trying to figure that out. If it's not our personnel, it's our contractors. We're hired directly, and they do follow our rules. I mean, I was on a call from 4 to 4:30 today, and we're doing some work out in Ackworth, and the contractor out there, somebody mentioned just make sure the contractors are driving slowly and doing what they should be. So, we've been a part of this community for a long time, and everybody knows who we are and where our buildings are. And I worked 36 years of public service before coming to the co-op. I've been here almost 10. And to me, either we're going to do it right or we're not going to do it, because you're not going to hide. It's so. We're trying to just use a little corner of this parcel in case there is plans for the future that we haven't figured out yet.
Thank you.
June, I have a question. So since this is this waiver would be in lieu of a site plan review, should we open a public hearing?
We haven't advertised one, so there's no
Okay,
need
all right.
to, and because the butters weren't notified,
Yeah,
again, you're
okay.
just looking at, do you want to have them
Yeah.
and then lead to that or not?
Okay,
Yeah.
just wanted to double check on that. Any
The
other?
lines going into it are going to be underground, is that correct?
Correct.
So coming from the substation to the street level underground to the building?
Yeah, we're actually not even, the substation, everything is coming across here, I think.
Okay.
Well, no, right here. This is the
Yep.
substation.
Yep.
But the power lines, which is, power, cable, phone, everything, are on this side of the street.
Yep.
So what we'll do is the typical, again, as a utility guy, it's typical, we're just gonna dig a trench, and I know that in Sandwich, we've got 2, I think, 4-inch conduits coming down one pole, going into there's a part of the building where they come in. One is being used, one will be a spare, and we'll probably do, for the power, we'll probably do, again, 2 3-inch or 2 4-inch conduits, and probably 2 2-inch, just in case. To me, once you dig in the ground, put the conduits in, because it's gonna be a lot cheaper than digging it up later. But it'll all be from the poles in, underground.
And if you encounter ledge, you'll just
If we encounter ledge, we'll bring in, a hammer.
hammer it, or- okay.
I was gonna say, it doesn't seem like it, but you never know. This is gonna be.
No, behind that where the Grange Hall was, I remember there's a big knob of ledge there, that's why I'm asking, but it's going to sit in roadside farther away, a
Yeah,
little farther
you
away.
say, as a child, you remember ledge back here?
The Grange Hall is right in back of where you're going to be. It's like on a knob. I think the stairs are still there.
Oh, okay, really?
But yeah, there was a big knob of ledge there, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, no, if it is, again, we're talking, probably a 1 or, you probably dig it 2 feet wide, but you only need a foot, and if you have to
Yep.
hammer it, that's what we'll do. I mean, we need it to go overhead, I assume that would be allowed also. I mean, there's not a requirement for underground, is there? No, so, that would be another option. We could always set a pole and just go overhead, but typically for these, we've gone, I mean, again, the 3 that I've been working on already are all underground, in and out.
So I'm not detecting all that much opposition here.
I would say that since this is a public utility, we should consider giving them the waiver.
Okay. Do we bring this to an official vote?
Sometimes when there's a question, I would say let's just vote on it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm okay with
Well,
issuing the waiver.
yeah. Should we make?
I will move that we issue a waiver.
I'll second.
Now we can discuss.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Okay.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the waiver is approved.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate
you.
your time.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you very much.
Hopefully a year from now, this will be running.
Yes.
So, have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
Be safe, Bill, too.
All right. Other business for members of the board and planning staff. So, takeaways from joint meeting with the zoning board. So our last meeting was a joint meeting with the zoning board, and we had a pretty lively discussion, and lots of stuff was talked about. Some of it a little bit beyond our capacities to handle in some ways, but I think the consensus was that we were working pretty well together, or that the process was working pretty well, I should say. There definitely seemed to be an openness when necessary to working together or potentially having another joint meeting. And there seemed appreciation of some of the clarified language in the ordinance, which would help them with special exceptions. And I guess that's something to keep in mind going forward as we continue to review our zoning ordinance. If anybody else has any other thoughts?
I wasn't able to be here, but I did watch it
Yes.
on Zoom or YouTube, and I thought you covered quite a lot of ground.
I think there was a lot of interesting discussion. I think most of the things that I was hearing from the zoning board were more general concerns about the zoning ordinance and less of input as a zoning board about the ordinance. So I'd say if we do this again, I think having a carefully structured agenda, so we've got some very specific questions, because obviously we're interested in the input of the zoning board as a zoning board and as private citizens in the zoning ordinance. But I think we could be more productive if we are
Carefully structured written agenda. I came in with a bit of an agenda, but the questions often pretty quickly moved. Putting it in writing, perhaps.
So I thought there was some interesting comment, but in some ways it felt like we were almost giving a public forum to another board to discuss the zoning ordinance as private citizens. But there was a lot of great stuff in there, and I think there's definitely some room, and it's great to hear that it didn't seem like they had a lot of input as far as changing things that would help them do their job better. So
Okay. Discussion of site plan review regulations. I know you mentioned, June, you might be doing some work on this. I know we've all had a bit of a discussion already. We haven't gotten too far yet.
So I made a few slides just to kind of get some general information to you, if I can write the right window here. I'd hoped to have a couple handouts, but the printer broke, so next time. And I can certainly make this, send this to you. I'm not going to go too far into this because we're just sort of starting thinking about what kinds of changes are necessary to our subdivision and site plan review regulations. They're haven't had any work, once since I think 2007 and another sort of 2020 or 2002 or something. So they're almost 20 years old, or just a little, maybe 15 to 20 years old. I would say whatever last changes were made, they weren't very robust. So a lot has changed in the world of planning, and so I think there's some good things that we can do. What I wanted to share with you tonight was really both sets of regulations are structured in general, or they can be structured the same way. So in the kind of overview of the kind of outline is that you have sort of a section on authority and purpose, scope of review. When do they apply? We just went through that tonight. We have a definition of a 100-square-foot building, which is pretty small in most cases. Maybe we need to work on. I know the board's talked about, is there a way to sort of make it easier at times for people when the site disturbance is minimal? The site may already be disturbed at a point of, kind of what's that threshold? How do we better decide that? And under authority and that kind of stuff is just from the statutes. But then, application procedures, submission requirements, general standards, and then some other general requirements, and then how we administer it. Those are kind of general, kind of the table of contents in a way of the regulations. So I actually started to, each slide next coming up has sort of two of these sections. So like I just said, I kind of jumped ahead on that first part is really about, how is it structured? What's the purpose? What's the authority? And when do the regulations apply, whether it's subdivision or site plan review? Again, subdivision is when you're dividing up a parcel into smaller lots, and site plan review is for any time that you have multifamily housing with 3 and over, 3 units or over 3, I think it is, in that trigger of commercial design. And then the procedures are just, a lot of it, again, from the RSAs, when applications are due, that kind of stuff, what goes, and timelines, notices, the stuff we kind of do. But the other part that really gets going on this is sort of the submission requirements and the general standards for design. So, as you know, we have applications, you see the checklist, but really in the regulations, there's a section that says this is what you need to submit, all right? So somebody can submit something with, lots of details on there of both existing conditions and future proposed. It doesn't mean what the future proposed conditions or even the existing conditions may not 100% be accurate. We saw that tonight. There may be minor details like they got the label on one of the sheets wrong. That's not a big deal. But they did give us information, about the drainage. It was there, and then you work on that and ask for more information to supplement that to get to a better place of making a decision as a board of yes or no, or conditionally approve or not approve on the application. So these are sort of the two biggest areas. The submission requirements are what applicants know that they have to bring in to have a complete application, or they ask for waivers and give reasons why. And then you, as the board, are supposed to look at these items for kind of by our standards. I'm going to come back to that in a little bit here. Then the other parts are sort of other requirements when we do special studies, requiring fees, the escrow accounts, again, things that the staff does behind the scenes that you don't always fully see, but you can certainly always share that. And even yesterday, we had a discussion with a applicant who has a conditionally approved site plan and was really pushing back, saying, "Why do I have to do these things?" So, we held firm and said, well, that's what the planning board said.
You don't have to do those things. They just have to submit a revised site plan without those things.
Well, they said, well, maybe I'll go back to the planning board. We said, well, you're certainly welcome. There'll be another application fee and more noticing of butters and all that, and a whole lot more work. So just, take whichever path you want. No, it was a good discussion of it. And then how do you amend the regulation, definitions, that kind of stuff in the administrative part. So again, the two biggest parts are really the submission guide requirements and the general standards. So I think in most cases, all the parts of our regulations aren't too bad, or, as we get it, I say that, but, there's updates to statutes. We can find ways to really work on updating pretty much everything except for the general standards is where it's like the worst part of our regulations, the most outdated. So what we find in there are, you want specific guidelines, all right? And a lot of times I've heard over the years, people say, well, that's requiring too much from an applicant. And, the other side of it that I have heard over the years from developers is actually when you give us specificity about what you want, then I can design the plan to meet that, and then it's more easily reviewed and approved. It's when it's kind of like, what does that mean, is where you kind of get into some harder points. So you have to review those details in the application to know if they meet the standard that you want, all right? What is that standard for the hydrologic and hydraulic capacity of a culvert? We don't talk about that in our regulations very well. There's lots of guidelines on that. So I just wanted to give you, and I know this, so the idea that applicant details lead to your review, and that having those standards helps set expectations for new developments. So the real question is, how specific should the design guidelines or standards be? Basically enough to know how to design the site, and so for you to be able to say, yes, it's met, or no, it's not. And you can work with applicants to get more, or know when to waive things. So I know this is there's too much text on this, of course, but I was hoping to have this as a handout. So we'll just kind of skip over this, but I did just go into, and we will lead to, I think we'll do this probably in a Google Doc, similarly how we did the zoning amendments, and I think I'll put all of there at once, and we can start working with it, and so you can kind of see it as we work to update it. So this is just the landscaping, which is actually one of the smaller sections. Well, actually it isn't, but it's one that was a good example. So we have current standards and what I have cobbled together from some other sources of more specific standards. So basically, again, there's a lot here. This was going to be the a handout. We'll get that to you. But this says in the standards, basically, like adequate buffering areas and adequate landscaping between the site and adjoining streets. So what's adequate, obviously? Those are words that aren't really helpful. And then there it says, where is this? There was something in here that basically was the next to last bullet, all landscaping plans must show the size and type and common names of all plants. Well, that's an application checklist item, not a standard. So this is where our regulations for site plan review, this is from. Whereas more specific, and again, I know there's a lot of text, but we say, site disturbance shall be minimized and existing non-invasive vegetation and undisturbed soil shall be retained, blah, 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 effort to keep small stands of trees, that kind of thing. As you go on down, having the next to last one, that larger bullet, trees shall be planted in locations that provide site value for aesthetics, shading, and cooling of buildings or parking areas for energy efficiency, wildlife habitat, maintaining one tree for every 35 feet of frontage. This is very specific. I'm not saying we want to adopt that, but we're going to give you that kind of stuff for you to decide, does this work better or not? And we can, change this in any way the board so chooses. And then lastly, a landscaping maintenance plan and surety to cover sufficient to cover replanting of any landscaping for 3 years, because especially when things get planted, you want to have that kind of assurance on a large scale, if there's lots of plants put in, that they're going to grow and survive. Okay, so this was again just some examples from, to kind of give you a sense of how we're thinking about moving from what we have, working on some amendments to the subdivision and site plan to get better specificity. So the bigger debate will be what are those specifics. So we'll get there. Does that help to kind of explain where we're going?
Yes, thank you. So with the plan then to send that out to us so we can...
So you can actually read it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, perfect.
Can I just make a comment, John?
Yes.
That I think this is a great use of our energy right now. Just after several years of working on zoning amendments, which not to say we won't be doing that again in the fall, but we're guaranteed not guaranteed, but we're likely going to have success in any updated site plan and subdivision regs, because it just needs to go to a public hearing instead of having to go to a vote. So
It's a vote of the board.
Vote of us.
a vote of the board,
Yes.
right? So we can guarantee our own success essentially. So instead of just putting
Yeah.
countless hours into something that you then pull at the last minute or.
These are powers that are given to us as a board to decide what to include, as opposed to the zoning ordinance,
So-
which is a vote of the town to approve. So,
Speaking of things that get pulled at the last minute, I know we had talked about at some point, Joseph and June, about putting housing on the agenda, which is not on the agenda at this point.
oh, it is. It's E.
E.
Wait, I don't have the updated version.
It's on.
Yeah, there's two versions. Depends if you get the print.
Yeah.
Like I was looking at yours, and you have the old version too.
The one we emailed out, and then
Oh, so never mind.
we added it in, and it
Okay.
got posted, and it looks like we have a few people here that may be on,
Never
waiting
mind
on the
then.
whole meeting to
I'm looking
hear
at
about.
E,
the
housing.
housing
I'm
piece,
looking at the
so-
wrong version of this.
And we also have the capital improvement.
Yes, I was just going to get to that, but yeah, I didn't.
And
Okay.
the downtown walk.
Yes.
So we're only on B.
So, our next meeting, we'll be having a downtown walk, and we'll be figuring out an agenda for that walk before that time. So that'll be May 5th, and there is a rain date, I believe. Did we come up with a rain date?
Would be the
We talked about it, right? It would be the first June
June 3rd,
meeting.
I think it
Yeah.
is. My suggestion my hope would be that if if it's weather like, yesterday or the day before, that we would, June 2nd, actually, that we'll aim for May 5th as the
Yes.
downtown walk. If it's not great weather, we should start here and meet here, and if it's just pouring rain or, then it's not worth doing a walk, it just won't be that much fun. And then we could have a meeting here and talk more about site plan review regulations, if I can get some work done on that. Does that sound, so we can have an agenda of like either or, then,
Yep.
okay?
I think one of the things that's important to remember when we do something like a site walk is that we're not in a publicly noticed meeting, so we can't discuss any business that's currently in front of the board when we're at a site walk like that, because we do have a quorum available, so we
Yep.
have to make sure as a group that we're not talking about the application that's upcoming. That's just one of the things that we need to remember.
Thank you for the clarification.
You'll be so captivated by the comments we have on the walk that you won't want to talk about
We
it.
won't need to.
I'm not worried about that.
Thank you.
We did a pre-walk yesterday.
Is it the regular
I
time?
believe we're just meeting at the regular time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It's getting lighter out.
Oh, no, I'm fine with that. I just wanted to make sure we weren't trying to meet a little earlier.
Okay,
If you want to wait earlier to have a little more,
so
6:30.
updates on the capital improvements program committee?
I can start with the introduction and say that we've had 3 successful CIP committee meetings so far. We've come up with a committee staffed by, well, we'll go over that, but most recently, June had suggested that we kind of review this charge and purpose statement that's already been distributed to the board. The committee has been authorized by the planning board, but at the same time, we thought that because this is the first year that the CIP committee has really kind of gotten into things, we wanted to take a little time to lay out some guidelines for how to move forward, not only for this committee, but for years forward, so that it's kind of easier for the next group to pick up and run with it. June, do you want to run through the sections, or do you want me to? Well, I can do that. We've got the authority, which is basically what we discussed at our previous meeting before we authorized the CIP committee. The purpose and intent of the CIP committee. I'm just going to read the headlines, but the goals of the CIP, identifying criteria for what defines or what can be characterized as a capital project. I will touch on the composition because this is something that we would like to ask the board to vote to support tonight, which is that the CIP committee shall be formed annually by the planning board with the goal of 5 to 9 members. Ideally, members should include a representative of the planning board, the select board, the advisory budget committee, a member of the public, and town planning staff, town staff, including planning staff, town manager, and finance director, and/or finance director. A member of the planning board shall serve as the committee chair, and the planning board shall approve the members of the CIP committee and shall also have the authority to remove committee members. So moving on to duties, we recognize that it's an annual program. Talks about the goals of how we go about obtaining information and revising and making recommendations, conferring with town departments. And then at the completion of the process, the CIP committee will present the CIP to the planning board. The planning board will have to vote to approve or not. And then once it has approval, it will move on for the use of the budget committee and select board in their budgeting process. So our goal is to have planning board approval by early October. Did we say October 1st?
We're aiming for October 1st.
We're aiming for October 1st. So, ideally we'd have this CIP prepared for the planning board to review by at least the last meeting in September. What I would like the planning board to consider tonight is approving the charge and purpose statement, and actually I would also like to recognize the committee members that we have nominated for the year and approve the committee, which consists of myself, I've already been appointed. Zach Terrell has been the select board representative. Mike
Courier.
Michael Courier is the budget committee member. Brooke Wakefield has been a public member. Both Joseph and June have been attending as planning staff, and we've had Kathy and Ann, both from the town manager and finance directors. So.
And Guy was interested in joining too.
Oh, yes. And Guy, you were invited, and we haven't met you yet, but I'd like to invite you to the CIP committee as well. So.
Can I make a motion to approve the charge and the slate of committee members for the year?
All in one. Thank you.
Enthusiastically, well done. That's swift and great work.
Second that.
Thank you.
Is
And one other update, well, not that it's
No.
germane to the vote, but I did speak to the superintendent of the schools, and she has already sent me the information they have on their CIP. So we, kind of like what the town gave us already, we have a draft of what the school's anticipated CIP elements are for the next 10 years, and if we need more information, we can go to them. So that concludes my update, and I will entertain a vote.
Nice, thanks.
Okay, so we have a motion and then a second to approve the
charge and purpose.
the charge and purpose and the members. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay.
Another
Approved.
step forward.
Thank you very much, Phil.
Thank you.
Before we
Thank-
move on,
thank-
can we just let Joseph talk just briefly about the spreadsheet? He's.
Yeah,
I
would you,
don't
can
think
you
we're
show
gonna
us?
share it yet, but
Oh.
just want to talk about what you've done.
Okay.
He's done some amazing work so
Yes.
far on it, so.
Thanks.
I think this is going to be a very, I'm anticipating this is going to be a much easier process than it has been for me in the past because Joseph's ingenuity and willingness to move in a different format. So
Well, I appreciate it. So we did decide to go forward. The committee decided to go forward with sort of a different, not a different approach, but an approach that's a little bit more digital than what has been done maybe sometimes in the past. Instead of necessarily submitting a physical sheet for each capital improvement item, we're making sort of a live Google spreadsheet, which is allowing each department to edit a tab within the spreadsheet so they can update their department's capital improvements or capital items sort of as they go. They can update, the purpose, their justifications, and then it all will feed into one page of the spreadsheet that serves as the whole town CIP, and that's then itemized by year. So we're working with the different department heads. We've met with, so far, Chief Morrison, and we have, we're looking forward to meeting with more department heads as we go, but so far they seem to be very supportive of this approach instead of, filling out a physical sheet necessarily, but being able to have edit access to, say, their own department tab and then filling it out from there. So we're trying to make it a little bit easier on the department heads and also a little more, streamlined in that way.
a lot less paper to manage.
Okay, thank you, Joseph.
Thanks.
So I think next, excuse me, next up is housing. And I believe we were going to discuss, and I think, Joseph, you might have some updates, is it? On the Invest New Hampshire housing program, and how that might relate to matters that we're facing as a town and as a planning board, looking at our zoning, among other things.
Yeah, so we have this Invest NH housing plan, which is being put forward. Today, it was announced that it was tabled by the Executive Council, so we're not entirely clear on if it'll pass. It had the support of the governor and the House and Senate, so there still is a chance. Of course, being tabled doesn't mean it's not going to pass, but there's a desire for more details to come out. Part of it, though, which is particularly possibly applicable to us, there's a $5 million grant to municipality component for development regulation rewrite, hiring of a consultant. So that that is something that if the board was interested in pursuing that and this funding were to go through, there's the opportunity to pursue that funding. If the plan didn't go through, we're just looking today. There are some other similar programs out there that we could pursue. So, there is some funding becoming available. There are other grant opportunities proposed in this plan as well, including a demolition grant program, which we'd have to, do a little bit more research in, as well as another grant it's sort of an incentive, I suppose you could say, for municipalities that permit multifamily housing quickly. But again, these aren't terribly specifically defined yet, which is part of the reason that the council cited in tabling it for the moment, until there's more specifics about how the programs would operate. But there are some potential funding opportunities that, the board could, if the board were interested, we could pursue for development, regulation, updates, rewrites, that kind of thing, as well as, the other areas as information becomes available.
I think the take home for the planning board is to just pay attention to the news. I mean, it changes every day. It's $100 million, and I guess there was the issue for the executive council, if you read the news story, was that, there was 2 pages for how they're going to spend $100 million, so they wanted more specifics, which I think was probably a good thing, because we've sort of been like, I wonder how this is going to work. But we are starting to think about it. Again, capacity, if we're doing, site plan review, subdivision, how much do we want to take on thinking about the zoning? But our downtown walk will help us think about some of the conversations from a year ago or last fall, because I think that's kind of the area to mostly fill in. We have talked with Scott Whedon as building inspector and code enforcement officer. He has, asking him to start thinking about, and he already has a list of properties that might be candidates once we know what this demolition program is. There's some concerns about the cost for we have no idea how it would work, but at least we can have a list of targeted places if needed. So to be determined. I think we thought we were tonight going to have a little more ideas, but it's got tabled. So we can table it.
Well, thank you, Joseph and June. You've been busy, Joseph.
I'm doing a lot of.
All right, and I think that leaves public comments. So 7:57, I'd like to open the meeting for public comments.
We lost Susan Matheson and Alex Ray. I don't know if they
Yeah.
had public comments or if it just
checking it out.
maybe they were here for one of the issues we were talking about.
All right, well, it's still 7:57, and I'll close the public comments.
Would you entertain a motion to adjourn?
I might.
I will make that motion.
Second.
You weren't waiting. You can make the motion if you want. You don't have to wait for a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right,
You don't want to get the
the
reputation.
meeting is adjourned at 7:57.